The first time I thought something might be wrong with my son, he was 2 years old. He had been holding my hand. I put a piece of rubbish in a bin. Maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, and he was gone. I found him running in circles around the elevator shaft, not hiding, not scared, not looking for me, running in circles, arms out, completely joyful. And I stood there, heart pounding from 30 seconds of absolute terror, watching my son spin. And I had no framework for what I was seeing. As a doctor, I knew the medical textbooks, but as a mother, I was completely blind to the early signs of I have that framework now. And if you currently are trying to figure out what is actually happening inside your ADHD child's brain, you are exactly where my journey began. My son is 16 years old. He is one of the most interesting, complicated, genuinely surprising people I have ever known. The journey to understanding his brain started in a shopping mall, continued through a waiting room, a school meeting, another waiting room, made several stops at clinics and parking lots, and the kind of midnight Googling that never leads anywhere useful, and eventually landed somewhere that actually made sense. That somewhere is what I want to talk about today. By age 2, we had already started to notice things. He didn't hold eye contact the way other children did. He lined his toy cars up in a row, precisely, perfectly, before he would play with them. He hugged strangers, complete strangers, with his whole body. And he moved, constantly. He needed to move. His first assessment was at age 2. The result was sensory processing disorder, vestibular type, which is a clinical way of saying his brain was not reading the signals from his body the way most brains do. He needed movement to feel regulated. He needed spinning to feel still. He was a beautiful little figure skater because figure skating is just organized, sanctioned spinning. He was brilliant at it until he discovered fear. Then came kindergarten. One afternoon, I picked him up from school and I noticed he was gasping. Not crying, not in pain, not blue. Gasping. I'm a physician, which means that when it's my own child, I know exactly enough to terrify myself completely. I drove straight to the emergency department. There was a 2-hour wait. My son sat beside me, happy, chatting, gasping away, utterly unconcerned, while I ran through every respiratory differential I knew. I had already listened to his chest 7 times. His lungs were clear. I knew. Some part of me knew. But the part of me that was his mom needed someone else to confirm it. The triage nurse checked his vitals. All normal. We went home. I called my GP the next morning. I told her, I think my son has Tourette's. She referred us. We were right. Here's the thing about ADHD. It doesn't always show up on schedule. My son had already been assessed, diagnosed, flagged, and supported. There was already a file. Already people in his corner. He had been in pre-kindergarten with additional supports, specifically to prepare him for the school system. And still, it wasn't until grade 1 that ADHD made itself fully visible. Because that's what ADHD does. It waits for the gap. The gap between what a child's brain is wired to do and what the environment starts demanding of it. In pre-kindergarten, the gap is small. Play, move, explore, rest, be curious. In grade 1, the gap opens. Sit still. Focus on demand. Sequence tasks. Produce output on a schedule. My son's brain, like a lot of ADHD brains, had been managing just fine until the world started asking for things that required a very specific kind of sustained effort. The diagnosis came through: ADHD. And I remember sitting with that word, a word I had written on charts, used in referrals, explained to other families in my clinic room, and realizing I had almost no idea what it actually meant when it was sitting inside my own child. So let me tell you what I've learned, not only from textbooks, from the research, yes, but also from watching my son grow up. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. I want to start by saying that name is misleading, and I'm not alone in thinking so. It is not that ADHD brains cannot pay attention, it's that they cannot always choose what to pay attention to. There is a significant difference. In a neurotypical brain, the prefrontal cortex, the region behind your forehead, acts like an air traffic controller. It decides which signals get through, which tasks get priority, which distractions get filtered out. In ADHD, in that brain, that same system works differently. The signals that get through most easily are attached to novelty, urgency, routine, hard, repetition, hard, tasks with some distant reward, very hard. But something new, something this child genuinely cares about, something with a deadline that is right now. The ADHD brain doesn't just focus on that, it can hyper-focus, doing in 2 hours what might take others 2 days. And then it struggles to start the next thing, the ordinary thing, the thing that has to come after, because the fuel ran out. That fuel is the neurotransmitter most associated with motivation, reward, and focus. In most brains, it's produced in relatively steady amounts throughout the day. In ADHD brains, it's processed and managed differently. Less is available for tasks that feel routine or unrewarding, and the brain goes looking for it elsewhere. Movement helps, and hence my son running in circles around the elevator shaft. Every parent of an ADHD child has an elevator shaft moment. That one specific, confusing behavior that made you realize your child's nervous system was operating on a completely different frequency. If you're listening to this right now, tell me yours in the comments. I want to read them, because we need to normalize these moments. Novelty helps, urgency helps. That's why so many ADHD children do their best work at night before the deadline. The night before the deadline. The deadline is finally generating enough urgency to fuel the system. It is not laziness. It is not bad character. It is not a choice. I watched my son spend 3 hours not starting a 1-page assignment. Not because he couldn't do it, because his brain could not get traction on it. I watched that same child spend 5 hours building an intricate world in a game, completely absorbed, focused, creative, and at ease, and felt the particular kind of whiplash that comes from understanding that this is the same brain, the same child, but different fuel. ADHD is not about capacity. It is about access. One more thing, because it matters enormously for complex kids. ADHD does not exist in isolation. 50 to 60% of children with ADHD have at least one co-occurring condition: Tourette syndrome, sensory processing differences, learning disabilities, anxiety, because spending years being told you're not trying, when you are trying harder than anyone else in the room realizes, does something lasting to a child's nervous system. This is why I never talk about my son's ADHD as if it was the whole picture. It never was. Complex kids have complex presentations. Your child's brain is not broken. It is just wired differently. And there is a profound difference between these two things. If you are in Canada and you suspect your child has ADHD, here's what I want you to know. Formal assessment wait lists here in Canada can run anywhere from 6 months to over 2 years. Whether you're navigating the system in Ontario, Alberta, British Columbia, or the Maritimes, developmental pediatricians take time. And private psychoeducational assessments are expensive. But here's the secret to school navigation in Canada. You do not need a formal diagnosis code to begin accessing classroom accommodations. Whether your province calls it an IEP, IPP, SPP, or a lesson plan, schools can implement environmental supports based on observed needs alone. Talk to your child's teacher and ask them to document what they're observing. Keep your own notes, what you see at home, what time of day is hardest, what seems to help, and talk to your family physician. A GP can start the conversation. They can refer. They can screen. In many cases, they can initiate treatment while you wait for a formal assessment. My son had supports in place before we had all the words for what was happening. The supports came first. The labels came after. Don't let waiting for the perfect diagnosis become the reason you wait to help your child. He doesn't run in circles around the elevator shafts anymore. He's 16. He has his own systems for regulation now, mostly figured out by himself over years, through a combination of understanding himself and eventually being in environments that understood him too. But I think about that 2-year-old sometimes, the one who was running in circles, arms out, completely joyful, completely himself, before assessments, before the meetings, before I had any framework at all for what I was witnessing. And I think about the mother I was in that moment, panicking at the rubbish bin, 30 seconds of terror that felt like much, much longer. And I want to go back and say something to her. He was fine. Not in the way I was afraid he wasn't. He was fine in the way that actually mattered. He was regulated. He was doing exactly what his nervous system needed him to do. He was in his body, in the only way his body knew how to be. I was the one who needed the framework, not him. The shift from what is wrong with my child to what does my child need took years. It didn't happen at the diagnosis. It didn't happen suddenly one morning. It happened slowly, through reading, through watching, through getting it wrong and adjusting, through conversations with teachers who saw him clearly, and conversations with teachers who did not, and learning to tell the difference. The first question, what is wrong, is a dead end. The second one, what does he need? That's where the work actually lives. If your child has an ADHD diagnosis, or you're in the middle of wondering whether they might, the research on ADHD brains is genuinely hopeful. More hopeful than the name suggests. More hopeful than a lot of what circulates in parenting spaces. These are not brains that are missing something. These are brains that, given the right environment and the right understanding, do things that other brains find genuinely difficult. The work is in building that environment. Understanding the brain is the first part of that. In coming episodes, I want to go deep into exactly how to navigate the Canadian school system, the specific accommodations you're entitled to ask for, and the phrases I wish I had used before my son's very first IEP school meeting. Hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. And if this video found you at the right moment, if it gave you a bit of breathing room today, please share it. Put it on a parent group chat. Send it to the mom or dad who just got that stressful call from the principal. Let's help them replace the panic with a framework. He's 16. He's fine. We are fine. It was a ride to get here, but we got here. See you next time.